So last week, Marcus was in the church porch, the liminal space. He was looking inwards to the church interior and then outwards, out to those passing by on the street. Of course, one of the few advantages of this lockdown period is that we aren't stuck in the pulpit. We can choose where we film the sermon to provide a visual enhancement of the message. Now, all things being equal this week, I might have wanted to film myself standing in a betting shop or at the centre of Ocean Terminal, or even just across the road there. Because this week we're thinking what it means to step outside of our comfort zone, to take risks as a congregation. But I'll let you into a secret. I'm really happy that for many reasons I can say, yes, actually I need to be inside the building, I can't go out. Because really I would have felt very uncomfortable standing outside giving a sermon in these kinds of clothes. Last week a lady died. Her name was Diane Colville. She was deaf and her native or first language was British Sign Language. And there's a short clip doing the rounds amongst the deaf community of her rendition of the 23rd Psalm, "The Lord's my shepherd." And if I can, I'm going to try and share it with you, either on Facebook or the YouTube channel or on the website. So I'll try and put a link up to it. Because Diane made great use of something called visual vernacular. She told others of the message of that psalm. By becoming the sheep, she pulled you in so that you too began to feel what it would be like to walk beside still waters, to be guided and ultimately to jump into the shepherd's arms and be carried along with him. And she could do that because that is a language that she was using that's all about characterization, visuality, and movement. It was a beautiful, totally cultural appropriate rendition. But of course, in our context, in our service, it wouldn't have made any sense at all. We began lockdown by starting to think about how we do church. Do you remember I stood there near the altar and I said, why? Why am I wearing this? Why am I doing this? Why do we have a service as we do? Why do we sing hymns and psalms and spiritual songs? Why do we appreciate the organ music? And all of that comes together to be our cultural context. It's not wrong. Our traditions have built up over the years, and they've been grounded on a desire to express God's saving message. At its best, this is not a cultural shell where we come to act out our parts each week. There's a deep desire to worship, to join together, to express the joy, peace, and truth that's there within us. May come as no surprise that I'm going to quote from C.S. Lewis and his book Mere Christianity. C.S. Lewis wrote, "God designed the human machine to run on God's self. God is the fuel our spirits were designed to feed on. There is no other. God cannot give us a peace and a happiness apart from himself, because it's not there." And I realized that we don't just reflect God's peace and love and mercy, but instead it actually bubbles up from within us. It's not that we reflect holiness once a week from the light of the stained glass windows. It's that wherever we are, we have that God-like twinkle in our eye. And at last, yesterday's Zoom meeting last Wednesday, it was obvious that many of us have come to know God better through meeting and interacting with other people. And of course, as we approach Ascension Day, There's the promise from Jesus that it will be the Holy Spirit that continues to work inside us, even though Jesus is not walking the earth anymore. As today's gospel reading says, we have not been orphaned. We know that life is changing, even in the midst of it's changed a lot in the past few weeks. But we need to think how that message, how that same truth can be told to people, different generations, different situations, different cultural contexts. So, for example, even as I was growing up, hymn singing in assemblies was going out of fashion. And I know for my son and my daughter, they didn't really have assemblies at all. There were meetings. But every school child in Edinburgh will know the Fishy music songs. Build up one another, you are a star, all that kind of thing. Fishy music was set up by Stephen Fishbacker, who's now a member of St James's Leith, used to be at P&G's. And he was building a bridge to other cultures using songwriting. And I thought of him as I read about Paul in our reading today. Paul arrives in a new place, in a new culture. He has God's Spirit bubbling away inside him. But he doesn't say to the Athenians, look, there's a really good synagogue over there. How about you go there and see what the service is like? No, he's a good Jew, but he respects their culture. He sees the good in who they are, and he uses that as a jumping off point from which to tell us about God as revealed through Jesus. He uses their language, even though we know that he would be far more comfortable talking about high priests and circumcision. He puts himself out. He tries to see it through another's eyes, and he respects where the Athenians are coming from. So what would it take for us to build bridges? Often it's not as hard as we might think. Morag and I were weeding outside the church yesterday, and people stopped to chat. I know that so many of you are part of clubs and groups and societies in the city. You're already out there. But I wonder if the issue for us is that sometimes we don't have the confidence of knowing our story and having the words to explain what this spiritual God thing we carry around with us is. And often that's maybe because the liturgy on a Sunday is a very different language from that we would need to talk to our friends in the Bach choir, or feeding the homeless, or whatever it is that we're doing. But those who ask questions, who talk with us, they don't want polished quotations and rehearsed speeches. We might think that we're not good enough, or that we don't know enough, or that we'll say the wrong thing. Well, maybe we will, but we will be authentic. And that's what people want. Just be you. Because, of course, well, it won't just be you. We're not left as orphans. There'll be that bubbling God Spirit inside us to help out. And the great thing is that we can start doing it now. Even if you're shielding the conversations you have over the phone, the letters that you write, the cards that you write, they all express something of who you are and the hope that's within you. We don't have to wait for lockdown to finish. As Paul says, God is not far away from anyone, and in him we live and move and have our being. Amen.